For the Southeast Arrow, my name is Patrick Buck. My guest today is the 18th president of the Southeast Missouri State University, Dr. Carlos Vargas. Dr. Vargas, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You have been the president of Southeast Missouri State since 2015. In that time, you've seen a great deal of change and a great deal of challenge. We can lead towards that, but my first question, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
I had a sandwich with cheese.
Delicious.
And a cup of coffee.
Delicious.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with that. Speaking of cheese, you are from Oaxaca?
My mother is from Oaxaca in Mexico. I was actually born in Mexico City.
In Mexico, you went to the National Autonomous University,
Yes.
and you got a Bachelor of Science in Physics.
Yes.
What propelled you to go into physics?
One is that I enjoyed science. When I took my first class in physics, the teacher went around the room asking what we were going to study. And when it came to me, I said physics. And he said, why? And I said, well, because I don't want to have to deal with people. So I said, you know, all the molecules and all atoms behave exactly the same way, so I don't want to have to deal. And we know in Spanish we say that every head is a world. Every person is different. Yeah, that was the second one. And maybe the third one is that my parents never went to college. They never even went to high school. And so they never influenced me. I'm assuming that if they had gone to college, they might have suggested something that seemed to be more essentially productive in terms of salary. They didn't. So when I said physics, they said, okay, that sounds fine. And so that's how I ended up there.
You get your Bachelor's of Science in Physics and then a PhD later on in Physics and Aerospace Science, and then a Master's in both fields.
Yes.
From the University of Michigan. In 1978, after you got your Master's, what did you see happening for your life? Where did you want to go? How did you want to live?
First of all, I wanted to go out of the country to study my advanced degree. I had my eyes set on Germany. I had been studying German to do that. But I was also studying English at the same time. And so for reasons that may be a little bit long to explain, which are very interesting in many ways, though, anyway, I ended up coming to the U.S. And Michigan is a place that I didn't really know. Mm-hmm. So a friend of mine actually suggested that institution. We applied, we were admitted, and so we ended up there. I ended up going to the PhD program from the very beginning. So the master's degrees were degrees that I obtained as I was studying to get my PhD. My initial intent was to go into a field that was more applied, not quite physics. But then when I did, and I got my master's degree as I was working towards that, but then in that process I thought, this is not satisfying me. And so I switched from the field of remote sensing, which is what I was being given a scholarship to do, into physics. And so I had already gotten a master's degree, so I then switched into physics, and then I took the physics curriculum. I got a master's degree and then a PhD. And so it became a combined PhD, physics and aerospace science.
At the time when you were in Michigan, were there many other Mexican students that were able to speak German and English and Spanish?
No, as a matter of fact, when I was at that age, even in Mexico, there were not very many people who spoke English. It was not as common. It has become quite a bit more common now because television has really played a role, and the communication across countries has become more intense, and English has become really the language to communicate in the world. At one point, you may be aware or remember that people were talking about French becoming the language that was going to be used across the world, and then German. And then, as it turned out, English became the more prominent one. So more and more people are encouraged to learn English. And so in Mexico right now, it's fairly common to. In the main cities, in the big
Right.
cities, in the small cities, it's not as common. But so no, there were not too many other people that spoke, or at least had understanding of German. We were actually at the time, I remember, we were only 9 students from Mexico at the University of Michigan with scholarships from Mexico.
Wow. Now, just to pivot a little bit, you mentioned your parents supporting your decision to go into physics and not really influencing you in a different direction. You have been known to show a tremendous amount of support, kind of a second father. You're a very parental figure at the university. To your students, it is reflected across the campus. People know you as being someone who supports his students, his faculty, his staff, his athletics. Where do you think that comes from inside of you?
As I walk around campus, I identify myself with students. My family was not a family with resources. I was able to go to college because in Mexico, going to college is pretty inexpensive. When I was going to college at the time, I was paying $8 a year for tuition.
Wow.
Right now, it's maybe about $200 or $300. And so I see students here who I believe have all the potential to do anything they want to. And that's why I am so passionate about trying to help. In every aspect of their life, trying to encourage them to see the positive that exists in this world and not let the negative news and the negative developments drag them down.
You told Diverse Education in 2018 that you were excited to get here and to see the community and to engage with the community. What has that site and engagement brought you in your tenure?
I was very pleased. I had never heard of Cape Girardeau, Southeast Missouri State University. I knew about the Mississippi River. I had never seen it. But when I came here, what I felt, and Pam and I both felt the community really being embracing us and the university. And it really called my attention, and it was an important factor in my decision to accept the offer to become the president, how committed the faculty and the staff at the university were to help students. That resonated with me because that's my passion. And so I thought this is a place where I don't have to be fighting anybody to pay attention to the students.
You talk about resilience. You have navigated some of the more tumultuous times in the last 10 years, maybe than some other presidents. You dealt with, in 2016, just oddities sometimes. Clowns on campus is one of those things. You dealt with a very polar presidential candidate in Donald Trump coming to the Show Me Center in 2018. And of course, in 2020, you navigated through the COVID-19 pandemic. What type of decision-making and support systems do you rely on? So how do you make those hard decisions to, say, close the university? I know it's not just your call, but who do you rely on, and where do you get the resilience to do those types of things?
Perhaps it's a result of my being an optimist. And I hear sometimes people saying, I'm an optimist. I mean, I am an optimist. When I face problems, I don't let them drag me down. I just feel this is something we need to deal with, and we just need to deal with it. And the way that I deal with things is by giving other people an opportunity to share and to contribute to the solution. So over the years, there are aspects, there are initiatives, there are things we did where I played a very key role. There were others where I was really peripheral. supportive but peripheral to it. So I don't claim that everything that happens that I'm involved in is the result of my leadership. Well, perhaps of my leadership in the sense that I give others the opportunity to contribute to it. But it's probably a result of optimism and trying to figure out, okay, so we have a problem, so let's just solve it. Let's just deal with it the best we can. And I also feel that it's important not to create a fear of failure. In the business world, people talk about CEOs creating sometimes a fear of failure, where people have fear about acting because they feel that if they do the wrong thing, that then they're going to lose their job or they're going to have a negative repercussion. I tell people that it is important that they don't have a fear of failure, that we try something, and if it doesn't work, we fix it. We do it differently. And that's part of what my own father taught me as a small business owner, but also something that I have paid attention over the years. And what's important there is that I think reflecting on things is important. I mean, we interact with lots of people all the time. The question is, and people tell you things all the time, so what's important is to focus and learn the good things.
Right.
The things that you think are going to be beneficial, not to learn the things that are not going to be beneficial. And that sometimes comes with preparation, with education. I frequently repeat this phrase by former president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, which is, education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. And I believe that.
It shows. I can tell you it shows. You foster a culture of excellence, not just the good things, but you foster a culture of standing down your problems, like you say, being resilient and being optimistic. Can you identify a moment of resilience from the community, whether it be SEMO or the Cape community, a moment of resilience during the pandemic where you felt people come together to get through?
Yes, absolutely during the pandemic, we created a group at the university, and we met sometimes even more than once a week. It was about 25, 30 people or so, and we came together and we made decisions, and the decisions were not decisions that were necessarily supported by everyone, but I thought it is important that we respond to them. And for example, we decided that we needed to mask ourselves, and that's something that there was a little bit of a disagreement, between the students and the faculty and all that. But we did it in a way that was reasonable. We didn't impose it arbitrarily, I think. We talked to the students. We tried to explain to them the reasons for that. And we talked to every decision we made. We were in touch with the health center here in Cape so that we knew what they were doing. And so I believe that we came together really very effectively as a community within the university. And I was very proud because we were never seen by the community as a focus of infection.
Okay.
And so our infection levels were very low.
Right.
We paid attention to every aspect. We tried to figure out where we could quarantine students that were infected with the virus. We paid attention to the regulations by the federal organizations, the suggestions, the encouragement, and all that. And then I personally have used my understanding of science and how science works. And science is not necessarily always right. You need to be willing to change your views based on the evidence that comes up. And so I think that plays a role. And I felt that we as a community came together very nicely.
Okay.
And so that's an example of resilience. We did not succumb to the certainly the intense pressure
Right.
that we were feeling from around the world, literally, about how bad this was. And we just kept working and not necessarily saying the sky is falling. We're just going to have to continue to deal with this and do what we need to do, and then observe the development of the new findings, the new initiatives, the new efforts, and try to figure out how to integrate that into the university's response.
Right.
And again, I was pleased. I think the community, Cape community, felt good that we were paying attention to what they were saying, that we were not ignoring them. And again, as I said, I think that we ended up not being focused. And consider the fact that many of our students were and continue to be international students. So that potential for the community saying, hey, your international students are contributing in a large way to what's happening, that never occurred.
Right.
And so I thought that was an example of us coming together and being a resilient organization.
The one way that I could describe your presence on campus is ubiquitous, and not just on campus, outside in the community. You are a ubiquitous person. You are everywhere, like water. It is. I can go to dinner. I can go to a nice dinner at Celebrations and see you sitting behind me. I can go to the Saturday morning market and see you walking with Mrs. Vargas. I find that very interesting and very telling about your character, that you don't hide in your ivory tower, that you're not too powerful to be seen, or you really reveal yourself. You're transparent. I think that fosters a certain community, like I said, here on campus, where people feel like they can access you. And you said before that talking to students one-on-one is extremely powerful, and that there's a perception of the president being too busy, and that you're against that. Can you discuss a specific moment or a specific student outcome that you are extremely proud of?
There are a number of them. I hate to identify one, but I will tell you, when I sit down with the students one-on-one, oftentimes students share with me part of their life and the struggles they've had, and I feel honored that somebody's willing to actually open up and share some of the challenges that they face and or that they have faced. To me, that is somebody who is willing to become vulnerable. I find it humbles me, because I feel that how is this student or this person willing to share those things with me and become so vulnerable when they don't know me that well? So I enjoy talking to all kinds of students, literally undergraduate, graduate, international, domestic, from different student athletes, you name it, Greeks. And the thing is, I learned, the students may not know this, but I am learning when I'm talking to them.
Right.
Because that's something that is in me. I believe in asking questions. I believe in giving a person opportunity to talk. There are some individuals who are really not interested in hearing somebody, but just really in talking to somebody. I, on the other hand, very often I'm quiet because I'm trying to digest what I'm hearing. So I really, truly reflect on what I hear from people. So when I talk to the students, my mind is running and thinking, okay, so this student did this, and how did I do that? And I impresses me how sometimes they have the resilience to continue to work hard and to strive, even though they have been facing so many negative experiences. Just recently, somebody was telling me last week about his life and how his mother was able to help them go to college, and in ways that I thought, oh gosh, I don't know that I could have done that. Because you know what? I feel unworthy of hearing those things because I didn't have a sad childhood.
Mm-hmm.
You see, my childhood was happy. We did not have money. We didn't own a house. We were, let me tell you, in Mexico City, over a period of 10 years, we moved 9 times.
Wow.
From house to house. So not because we didn't pay the rent, but the point is for what my father would look for jobs and does not. But my childhood, my parents were somehow able to give to my 2 sisters and me a happy childhood. We were not very troubled. So in the house there was no conflict.
Right.
And so when I hear some of the challenges that students have, I frequently say, I couldn't have done what you're doing. And when I say that to some students, sometimes I say that, I don't know that they believe me.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I'm saying that to make them feel better. Mm-hmm. But truthfully, I don't know that I would have been able to do what they're doing. So I'm honored and impressed about the students, many students being able to continue to keep trying even though they're facing challenges.
A lot of people have heard it, probably several thousand at this point, but it's your graduation speech.
Mm-hmm.
What first inspired you to use that speech? And what inspires you about that speech?
And you're maybe referring to how I end my comments.
Yes, sir.
At the end. I like to read.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I think that is something that I would encourage as many people to read as possible. Yeah. It's just such a part. But not just read like a novel. I think reading, paying attention to what you're reading is important. Mm-hmm. And so I'm always reading, and when I'm reading, I'm looking at how what I am reading deals or it has the potential to impact what I do. Okay. And so when I read, I think about, okay, how can I use this to help students in whatever way? Mm-hmm. So I came across that poem whose authorship is still in question. Is it a German author, or is it Christopher Loeb, who is not German? But I feel that it's such a powerful, brief statement about how they should see themselves. Mm. Because when you graduate, I think many times students are happy because they're graduating. But from one day to the next, it's like, okay,
right.
I graduated, right. But I feel the same way. You know?
Yes, absolutely.
That's why reflection is so important. Yeah. They need to reflect on what education does not provide immediate gratification. Okay. That's what I tell students. Education is the result of a slow process, mm-hmm. and I tell them it's similar to when you take a photograph. Okay. If you take a photograph of somebody one day, and then the next day, you hardly notice a difference. If you take it from one day to later, a month later, mm-hmm. maybe a little bit. But if you take it one day and then a year later, then you notice a difference. And so with education, it's the same thing. It's from day to day, it's hard to notice the difference. But after a period of time, a year or so, then you can tell how you have matured then that's become part of you, and it's creating additional knowledge inside your head. And so I feel that is an important part of people to read, and I integrate that. And so that poem, Come to the Edge,
Yes.
I feel is a unique way of sending students away and helping them understand they should feel different. They should feel physically, they may not be feeling different, but intellectually, mentally, they should understand, and they have to feel that positive.
Right.
They have to say, my father used to say, it's a translation that in English it's not as powerful, I guess, as in Spanish. In Spanish, and I'm going to say it in Spanish because I think it's, no vengo a ver si puedo, sino que porque puedo vengo. It almost sounds like a tongue twister. No vengo a ver si puedo, sino que porque puedo vengo. What it means in English is, I am not here to see if I can do the job. I'm here because I know I can do the job. You see?
Yes.
It's having that confidence,
right,
that you're going to deal with it. Doesn't matter what it is. You're going to deal with it. You're going to do the job. You need to have that confidence in you. And so that's what I always, in whatever way I can, try to convey. So when I read things and I say, is this something that can help me articulate the fact that I believe in the students, in every one of them, Because I truly believe that the student who drops out of school, I mean, of course, sometimes you just literally, it's a financial issue, it's a medical issue and all that. But those students who don't quite find what they want to study, it's just because they haven't found it, not because they are incapable or they don't have the potential. It's just, we need to help students find their passion. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think some of us are very good at saying from the beginning, this is my passion. Some of us are not. Yeah. And I think we have plenty of examples of that. And reading allows you to actually learn about other people who actually had that problem. That, how many people do you find that you read about that they were not really necessarily very successful until they were 55 or 60 years old. And then all of a sudden, you can never give up. That's a mindset. That's a mindset. It's not something that you're going to do just because somebody tells you to do it. It's a mindset. You have to start. And so how do you work within yourself to get yourself to the point where you believe in that? And it's hard. I do understand. See, that's the other thing. I do understand it's hard because sometimes life hits you.
Constantly.
Yes. And so it's something like, hits in the gut, I guess they say.
Yes.
And so after a little while, you're just like, okay, I give up. That kind of thing. So you need to not give up permanently. You need to take a break and rest and all that, but you need to continue to try.
Okay. I'll give you a break on the long question and ask you a short question.
Okay.
What are you reading right now?
I'm reading a very interesting book, 2 books right now that I can mention. One of them is called Think Again.
Okay.
Think Again is a book written by Adam Grant. And it's a book that talks about being willing to unlearn. Think about that. Being willing to unlearn. And that is, in some ways, to change your perspective based on new evidence. And
Very scientific.
Yes, exactly. Not just become dogmatic.
Right.
Really be willing to consider the idea that maybe you need to, the way you move forward is by incorporating and integrating new evidence into your beliefs so that they evolve.
Okay.
And then another book that I'm reading is called Outlive. Outlive. It's written by Peter Attia. ATTIA.
Yes, I'm familiar with Dr. Peter.
There you go. And he wrote this book, which is very thick, by the way, and it talks about medicine, and it talks about how medicine, he says that we are right now in medicine 2.0. You know, it's like the version of medicine we are right now in is medicine 2.0. We need to move to medicine 3.0. And medicine 3.0 is not only developing drugs to address the problems, the diseases we have, but rather to prevent the diseases from getting to us. Because he talks, you know, he says, as an example, diabetes. Well, no, for the most part, once you become diabetic, that's it.
Right.
It's almost impossible to reverse it.
Right.
He says, what do we need to do to avoid getting to that point? And so I think it's a very valuable book, and it's a valuable book for young people, so that they know how they can make decisions about their life, and maybe for older people to say, hey, I missed that. I should have done that.
I understand.
And for people halfway there to say, well, there's still time for me to change this and do that.
Of course. I like that. There's a change that is a bit nerve-wracking for many people. I'm sure it's not nerve-wracking for you. You're a total optimist. We've learned that. But the enrollment cliff is a concern for many people, many educators, and many institutions. How is the enrollment cliff best addressed as perceptions of institutions change and perceptions of higher learning change? How can administrators and leaders address that cliff?
That's a great question. It's a great question. You know, perhaps being an optimist is what makes me feel this way. And that enrollment cliff, I see it as a challenge that I'm excited to try to deal with.
Okay. Because
it really comes down to how do you convince individuals that that it's convenient and valuable for them to continue to study, and also how do you convince them that your institution is the one that they should come to. And I believe also that it's not just marketing. Marketing is extremely important. But I also believe in what they call truth, and that used to be called truth in advertising.
Right.
I don't like, and I don't support the idea of going out there and using marketing to create this image that you offer something that you don't offer.
Right.
So to me, when I talk about quality, when I talk about what we do, I'm always paying attention. Are we saying what we really do? I don't want to be in a position where I say something and then somebody comes along and says, well, you said this, but look, here's evidence that you don't do it. So the cliff is going to be one that is going to accelerate the change that needs to take place in education in general,
Right.
higher education in particular, to continue to be relevant to students. I absolutely believe that continuing to learn throughout your life is extremely important. It's extremely important. And I said continuing to learn. I didn't say higher education in particular, just continuing to learn. You don't want to get to a point where your ability to adapt and your skills remain stagnant because things change around you. And so in order for you to remain competitive, you need to pay attention to continuing to develop the ability to learn.
Right.
That's at the end of the day everything. And you know, you've heard that many times from if you look at history, many people have talked about that. You know, Confucius, a Chinese philosopher, said, you know, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach him how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. And so that's what we need to do. And it sounds good, but then I think on a day-to-day basis, sometimes we don't act consistent with that belief.
Yeah.
And so what we need to do in higher education is continue to ensure that the educational experience that students have in our institutions really provide the ability for them to develop skills that can be applied.
Okay.
And so Goethe, a German philosopher,
Right.
also said, and I've said that in some of my comments, being willing is not enough. You have to do. So we talk about the will to do here,
Right.
but you need to take that following step
Right.
and say, having that sort of the will is okay. That's the potential. It's like potential energy in physics, right? Potential energy. You have the potential to do something. Now you need to convert that potential energy into kinetic energy, which is now you need to move.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
the willingness to do something is the potential. Mm-hmm. You need to do. And so how do we help students do things? And so that means we need to adapt, and we need to work with our faculty, and our faculty need to continue to emphasize the development of skills and competencies, and not just stay within the theoretical realm of things. So universities and other institutions, we need to adapt to provide students with that opportunity, and do it in such a way that we don't say, okay, that's all you need to learn. You know that book that says, all I needed to learn, I learned in kindergarten or something like that? It's just like, well, okay, so it sounds good, sells books, but that's really not what we need to do. We need to continue to challenge ourselves, and that's something that I'm using more frequently these days. I tell students, you need to challenge yourselves. Mm-hmm. I give them an example as you don't want to go and take a class with a teacher that is very easy on you.
No.
You don't want to do that, because it's going to be an ephemeral feeling of, oh, great, I got an A.
Right.
Okay, you got an A. Now, when somebody asks you to do something that involves that type of subject, you're not going to be able to solve it, to do it.
Do you think that there's a place for maybe vocational learning, more vocational learning in higher education institutions, say a little, maybe not less, but as well as liberal arts, also things like welding or electricians and things like that?
Absolutely. I absolutely believe in that. You don't necessarily need a college degree. You have to decide what is it. Because in some ways, when you do that, you decide, what you're deciding is what you want your life to be like.
Right.
You're making a decision that is going to impact. If you want to be a welder, okay, well, you're going to be a welder. You want to be the best welder. That is important, right? So if you are not committed to doing something really well, it's going to be hard, because when people talk about any profession, an accountant, a scientist, a welder, a plumber, if you're not a good one, doesn't matter. You're not going to get the top salary.
Of course.
And so, regardless of what it is you have to do, you need to do it well. And I believe we need to stop creating these silos of, okay, vocational education, liberal arts education. It's all the same. Let's just help individuals in the vocational field that they want to do things with their hands, right? They say, okay, let's do that, but let's help you do it in such a way that you take advantage of new technologies, right? I mean, people talk about agriculture and sometimes have the idea that they have to be going out there going this all the time. And then when you actually see agriculture these days, you see this magnificent, combines and all that are just amazing, right? And it's all computerized, and the person in there is sitting there sort of, relaxing while the machine does the whole thing and goes around back. So we need to help them, continue to do that vocational, in that vocational field, but help them do it well.
Right.
And that's the part what I think is important. No, absolutely. Education in all its dimensions is extremely valuable, and we have a responsibility, being a public institution, to provide students with the opportunity to develop that way.
15 programs. in SEMO athletics
Mm.
had teams with grade point averages over 3.0 in the fall 2024 semester. And teams have won a combined 33 Ohio Valley Conference titles since 2019.
Mm-hmm.
You've been a student. You've also been an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
You played soccer here
Mm-hmm.
for a while when you first got here. What is it about student athletics for you that brings out that passion? Because you do have a passion when you are on the sideline or
Mm-hmm.
hyping up the crowd. What brings out that passion?
There is a famous old man, a Greek, who I think is said to have stated, healthy mind in a healthy body.
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe that athletics is an important component of being healthy.
Absolutely.
And so, and by the way, when you look at the educational system in the U.S., children from the very early ages are encouraged to participate in athletics.
Of course.
And so athletics is in many ways a integral part of the educational process in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
You can talk about other countries, but certainly in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe we have a responsibility also in the university to provide students with an opportunity to engage in athletics. That doesn't mean that you're healthy only if you do athletics.
Right.
In that way. And so ever since I came here, I said, when people ask me about that, over the years I've said, athletics is an important component, and I'm going to support athletics. I'm going to support athletics. I'm not going to do it at the expense of academics,
Mm-hmm.
but I am going to support athletics because it's something that students and families expect it to be there from the moment the children are little. I want to believe that in some minor way I played a role in contributing to athletics, the success we've had.
Mm-hmm.
That's, and again, one of those examples where I wasn't out there actively doing something. So my role in that probably maybe more in terms of the student athletes and the coaches and the staff saying, well, the president enjoys athletics. We don't have to be we're not sort of an appendage.
Of course, of course.
But he feels, and his wife too feels, that athletics is an activity that's a valid activity. It's a valid activity for us to be engaged in and for our students and all that. And I think that there is as a result of that, it may be somewhat subliminal,
Right.
that it gets into the students also,
Of course.
and they start doing well. And to be honest, I give a lot of credit to Coach Duke, who was here I think maybe the year before I got here.
Right.
But he really believes in the formation of a individual as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
and where it's not just athletics, it's actually also your academics. And the simplistic way that I have to describe it, he's very articulate, very good at speaking in public, but I say, if you do athletics, your body is going to suffer quite a bit.
Right.
And so you better have a plan B
Of course.
for when your body is not able to. So athletics is important. We need to support it. And hopefully that philosophy, that perspective, that view has had an impact. Now, honestly, Coach Duke, but many of the other coaches, Coach Sawyers, Coach Beezer, when he was here and he went, and he left to Mizzou, and others, they have bought into this idea, or maybe not, they didn't buy into it, but they have that collective idea that it's important for students to do well academically too.
It appears that it's made a significant difference in student athlete outcomes, as there have been, since 2016, no less than 10 professional athletes to come from SEMO, whether they go overseas to play basketball or they play basketball here, they play for the NFL, or any other possible outcomes. It has been tremendous to see that student athletes are not getting out of college and just falling on their face or being lost. It really reflects the holistic approach that you say that you and Coach Tuke and the number of other coaches have taken. It seems effective. As you look back on your tenure since 2015, which accomplishments fill you with the most pride and fulfillment?
I think if I were to identify one, it would have to be my ability to interact with the students, for students to know me. When I came to this university, one thing that I was very clear on is I wanted the students to know me. Right. I've been to many institutions where I literally have heard, I don't know who the president is, or I know who the president is, but we never see the president. I wanted them to know me. I wanted them, again, to give them that confidence. I want the students to know, I tell them jokingly, I say, I was not born with a degree. I was born like any of you. And so the degree came as a result of working towards it, right? So I wanted students, and I want students to feel that they have the same potential to do what anybody else did. And so that's what I try to always communicate. And that's why, and this is probably not as well known, but I have worked to continuously identify alumni to participate in events that we sponsor, because I believe that students connect better. And having students see, say, for example, that MLK event, right, an alum or alumna from the university makes it more real.
Of course.
It's like, okay, I'm sitting here, and that person was sitting here a few years ago. Why is there not the possibility that I can be what that person did?
Of course.
You know, and so that's what, to me, is important. And so I wanted students to see me and say, okay, well, he is first generation. He has had some challenge financially, certainly some challenge and all that, but he was able to do and get to this point. I should be able to do that. And so that's what I wanted to make sure, that the students knew me, that they knew that it's possible, as we say in Spanish, si se puede.
Yes.
Right?
Si
it
se
can
puede.
be done.
I got that.
Si se puede. You got that from them, eh?
Yeah, I got that from you just now.
So it's important to do that. So to me, that was important. Now, in saying that, you know, we have responsibility, and I knew that we have high quality programs, relevant programs, and so overall, I just hope that people realize that my intent has always been to do the best job possible.
Yes. I think it's clear that you intend to connect with your students and that you intend to impart to them a confidence. That's part of the culture that you really put on. Have you bumped your head at all in your time here? I say that to say, like, have you made mistakes in your decision-making or your conduct where you had to reprimand yourself or apologize and it made you a better leader?
The answer is yes. I've made many mistakes. I continue to make mistakes. I will continue to make mistakes. When I make a mistake, I'm very hard on myself. It troubles me. I don't sleep well.
I understand.
I mean, honestly, I don't. And then I try to fix it. Right. Yes, there are cases where it's unclear whether I made a mistake or whether I took a path that was not optimum. But there are some that I actually literally say, you know, I shouldn't have done that. And as I said, I don't have a problem accepting that I made a mistake. And that's something that I'm very proud of, and that's something also that I try to communicate to students and anybody, is we all make mistakes. We are, by definition, human beings will make mistakes. And when I talk to the students, I tell them, the students who come from orientation, this morning, as a matter of fact, I said, practice your ability to make good choices. Right. Practice your, and I say, that sounds probably strange, right? And because normally very few people say, practice making choices. Well, because not all of us are equally good at making good choices. And so reflecting on the fact that making a choice is something that you can practice so that you can improve your ability to make them is something that you should spend time doing. That's why I mentioned a little while ago, avoiding fear of failure is important, because we make mistakes. If we make a mistake, we just, we just fix it. Mm-hmm. We just try to fix it to the best of our ability. I've made many mistakes. I continue to make mistakes. Mm-hmm. I will continue to make mistakes. Mm-hmm. I don't have a problem accepting that I made a mistake, and that's something that I'm very proud of, and that's something also that I try to communicate to students and anybody, is we all make mistakes. Right. We are, by definition, human beings will make mistakes. And when I talk to the students, I tell them, practice your ability to make good choices.
Right. 2018, mm-hmm. during the War of the Will in SIU, mm-hmm. you made a decision. You made a decision, and sometimes our decisions are recorded, mm-hmm. and you went viral. Mm-hmm. Not common for a university president to go viral. What did that feel like, and how did you move forward from that?
I actually aged about a year and 2 months. That's how I look at it. That's an example of making a mistake. I will briefly summarize what happened. Okay. So we went to this football game at Carbondale, and when we got there, Pam and I, there were a lot of alumni in the parking lot and all that, and we started talking to people, and then somebody came to talk to me, and then they pulled me over to talk to other people and all that, and all of a sudden they said, hey, you need to drink from this thing. Now, some people don't believe it, because some people have told me, I don't believe you. But I had never seen a beer bong in my life. I had no idea what that thing was. And so they showed me this contraption here. And I'll tell you what I thought when I saw it. In Spain, people drink wine from they call it a bota. Okay? And it's a leather bag that they fill with wine. And then if you look it up, and probably in YouTube, there are all kinds of examples. It had a little hole there, and you squeeze the bag, and they have contests where you put the little stream of wine here, and then it runs down and into your mouth, and they have contests to see who can do that best without spilling and all that. So when I saw that thing with that little thing, and I thought of that bota from Spain. I thought, oh, and actually I'm good for that bota. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. So we need to put a beer. So I started pouring. I said, no, just don't put the whole thing, just a little bit. And so here I am going like that. And then the worst part is like, no, you have to kneel down.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, I'll kneel down. And when I'm doing this, Pam, my wife, comes over. So he started coming over, and I stopped and all that. And she said to me, I remember so well. She said, "I don't think you should have done that." And I said, "You know what? I think you're right." A week later, I had a meeting with the board of governors. Mm-hmm. At the time, it was called the Board of Regents, was meeting. And at the end of the meeting, my staff comes over and says, Dr. Vargas, we have something to show you. And they show me the video. Mm-hmm. And I went like, clunk.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I mean, it went national.
Yeah.
It was in CNN and Fox. I mean, everywhere, everywhere.
We've seen you grow. We've seen you play soccer incredibly.
Mm-hmm.
You're well known as a good soccer player, at
Mm-hmm.
least when I started college.
Mm-hmm.
You've been a extremely transparent leader. You've owned up to the mistakes that you made, and you've imparted that attitude on your students that you mentioned of having self-confidence and feeling like you can approach the world with an I can do it attitude.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that is extremely valuable. Do you have any other personal reflections that you'd like to share about, or your aspirations for the future after you exit?
Wow, I could talk a lot about reflections that I have, because I really see that as an no, it's not that I want to hear myself. It's just that I hope that by communicating these things, somebody will listen, and
Mm-hmm.
if it makes a difference in somebody's life, one person, that's all I care. I mean, that's already a win.
Right.
It's not that. I could talk about that a lot, but in terms of the future, truthfully, I am lucky that I'm healthy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I'm lucky that I'm healthy. So I am not somebody who is looking for the opportunity to just retire, right? And some people do. I mean, some people say, hey, I really want to retire. They look forward to sitting down in an armchair and watching it.
It was hard enough to get you into this armchair. So I know you're not looking for the armchair.
Yeah. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm hoping that somehow somebody will feel that I have something to contribute.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is, because it's not just my choice, right? They say, have you decided what you're going to do? Well, if another job comes by, it's not like I decide that. It's like somebody has to offer me a job. And so I don't know whether somebody will offer me a job or not. Will I sit down and start writing something, some of my ideas, some of my thoughts? Maybe. So I'm just not really sure as to what direction I'm going to go. Pam is younger, and so she's likely to continue to want to work and all that. But I'm just excited to have. There's sadness in me. Okay, so I confess that there's sadness, because I have loved this university. I love the students. I love being here, working with the faculty, with the staff. And having said that, we do have disagreements. Excuse me, but that happens everywhere, and then every family, every community, every group has disagreements and all that. So that's fine. But I think that the pleasure that I get from thinking how we can improve what we do so that the students are better prepared out there, mm-hmm. that to me is energy. To me, that gives me energy. That's something that I'm going to miss. And so, but I'm hoping that I can continue to contribute in some way in the future. But I'm very thankful for the board of trustees that felt at one point that I was somebody that deserved being given an opportunity to lead this institution. I'm very thankful for that. I'm very thankful to the community, to the students, absolutely, to the faculty, the staff. I'm sure that there's some out there that may not like me too much, but that comes with, as they say, with the territory.
It's clear that you are endeared to this community in a real way. You are something like a bastion of the community, a pillar, maybe a second mascot behind Rowdy. we might be able to get you up to the top spot here soon. But seriously, you have made a tremendous impact at the university.
Thank you.
The students love
Thank
you. The alums love you. You are an amazing leader. It has been a gift to watch you navigate difficult times, because it imparts to me and to other students how to navigate difficult times. And we all know they're coming. We all know that they come. Yeah. And that is just the way that life is. But I think that you have imparted an attitude of excellence and self-confidence I want to say thank you on behalf of everyone who cannot. And thank you on behalf of the Arrow for joining us, because you've been more than an awesome guest. You've been outstanding.
Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you so very much. I really appreciate those words. I
Thank
really
you.
do.
Thank you. We appreciate
you.
you.
Thank you.